Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to tape the drywall. After you have it hung, you can begin the process of taping. Now, this is a factory joint. Now, there's a difference between a factory joint and a butt joint. A factory joint is, it kind of has a, I like to call it a dimple in it. It kind of gets thinner towards the end of the piece. So once you get two pieces of factory or two pieces of sheetrock together that are factory joints, you get what we call the recess joint. Now, a recess joint is different from a butt joint. A butt joint is when you have the thickness of the 1/2 inch drywall butted up against another piece. So if you don't understand, I have another example. This is just a piece of drywall that I cut. If you notice, it's not a factory joint. It doesn't have a factory joint, but butt joints are kind of like this. You have a 1/2 inch piece of drywall and another 1/2 inch, and they butt together like this. And it's different from a factory joint because, like I said, factory joint butted together has a dimple in it, and this one doesn't. This is just flat. Okay, so I will show you how to tape a recess joint. You will need, when finishing drywall, you will need a 6-inch knife like this to apply the mud and embed the tape. You will need a 10-inch broad knife. This is for second coats. And then you'll need the 12-inch, which is good for final coats on factory joints, butt joints. You also need the tape itself. This is just paper tape. They're available wherever you find these tools in the sheetrock. They have mesh tape, which is different because the mesh is sticky at the back, and you just apply it right onto the drywall. And then you add your first coat over it. For the paper tape, you have to add a layer of mud, and then put the tape on top. And then that's how. So you also need the mud pan. Now, when you're doing a recess joint, the recess starts, say about 2 inches off the piece of the drywall. So you have about 4 inches of recess joint. So you can get on your 6-inch knife this much mud, but you really don't need this much. So I like to cut that in half using my mud pan, which has a blade on it. So you just cut in half, and you just apply a thin layer of mud. Now, you don't want too much mud, but then you don't want too little mud, or you will get wrinkles in the tape, and it won't dry properly. So you will need about this much, not a lot, okay? And you don't want it too thin, but you don't want it too thick. I'd say there's about a light 1/8 of an inch of mud that needs to be applied. So once you clean off the knife, you can now take your tape in. I must remind you that these aren't going to be the small. They will, the joints will stretch as far as the drywall is going. So you will have a continuous piece of tape going along the seam. This is just a small example. So on the tape itself, it has a little line going down. Now, this is good when you're doing corners because you can fold it in half like this, and it's what we call pre-crease tape. But it's also good for getting the tape centered in between the joint. So if you notice, I will take a little section off, and I'll find the center of the two pieces in the mud. I say, okay, so that's the center of the joint. That's where I also put the center of my tape. So you match the center of the tape with the center of the joint, or where you just found out where it was. Now, once you got it right in the middle, like right centered in the joint, you can either cut it with a knife or just by hand. It's just paper, so it rips off like that. You don't need any scissors or anything. Now, if it slides, which most of the time it will if it's a smaller joint, you can either use the pan that the mud is in to hold it so it won't slide, and all you got to do is embed it. Now, when embedding it, it's for making sure that the tape is applied to the wall surface and the joint concrete. So what I'm saying is that Paper is basically not going to go anywhere once it's dried. And you want to embed it like that. Now, if you'll notice, it's still wet, and the tape can still come out, but you have to let it dry at least overnight. You also want to clean off your edges, and what I mean by that is you don't want to leave it like that, because you won't be able to take that off. It'll be hard to stand. So anytime you get something on the wall, you just come by, swipe it off. Same thing here. When you have too much mud sticking up, or there's too much mud, you just swipe over it, clean it off. Otherwise, the finishers will have a hard time making the wall surface look smooth and like that. So clean off your edges is also important when you're doing the finishing, but it's also important now so the the finishers don't have any troubles after that. Okay, so that's the basics of taping, and I hope your project goes well.